Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, we will continue reading the divine order and the universe. But before, there was a question you asked to our friends last week. Many friends were happy about this question and they wrote their comments. We thank them so much. Maybe you'd like to remind the question.
Good. What was the question about? We had shared a link to a YouTube video, asked our friends to watch and think deeply about it in the context we read in this book. Briefly, it was a video about 3D biological printing of organs, like skin, ear, heart and kidney. Of course, this is done in a lab and a very complicated process. Template is the related cells of a patient. They took some and multiply these cells. They create an environment for these cells to multiply and live. And my question was, well, this is man-made, correct? Humans multiply these cells. Is such an application wrong, or right? Is it ethical or not? Actually, ethical part is not my concern but rather, do these cells have a being? In the light of what we read from the book so far, what kind of a system these cells make up? Is there an owner of them? Are they within an organization or not? Does a spiritual being benefit from this or not? I was looking forward to reading your comments on such points. And thank you. Your comments are good. Thank you for your contribution. First of all, we had formalized what we learned so far, as much as we could, in the matter universe. The only aim is the evolution of spirits, each and every motion of matter is for the evolution of spirits. Matter can't move by itself. The initial motion of matter is because of the original principle's original influences. Then, it follows that, whatever we do is because of the perceptual concentration of a spiritual being, hence a spirit. Whatever we do is in regard to the needs of our spirit. Be it a plant, an animal, or a human being. If this is the process, then the skin we printed in the lab isn't a matter. And if it is matter, then it follows that, this is an application of a spiritual being in service to the evolution of the spirit it is connected to. That skin is animated, alive, it is a matter organization, a matter formation. And since this formation is occurred, it means that this is related to the need of a spiritual being and its spirit. In a nutshell, there are spiritual beings that are responding to the needs of this organization and each of them are governing a skin cell. Let's say this patch of skin is transplanted successfully, then we can define this biological harmony as, these cell beings of more or less novice spirits are in a level of evolution that can be integrated with our organism's organization. If the transplant is failed, the cells in this patch dies and disintegrates, then the level of those cell beings are not in tune with our organism's organization and then, animation, vitality ceases. Our friends also asked many questions about vitality. Maybe in the following weeks, we can discuss this topic in detail because for the next week, we plan to reply your questions. We will do our best in replying most of them.
Yes, next week is for your questions, dear friends. If you don't have, then we will ask. One of our friends had asked a rather long question. This question is related to the parts we read in the previous weeks. I will only read a part of her question because it is too long. Briefly she says, I read the divine order and the universe and watched the videos, yet when I and many of my friends think about spirit, being inhuman as stated in the book, we felt that the book brings out a feeling of worthlessness and an incredible fear regarding the death. Who am I? I am not spirit, I am not being. I am consciousness. It seems like I am a stranger to all this. The spirit gets its needs through us, and we humans go through all kinds of pain and suffering when we leave our bodies, and revert to amorphous state. In other words, we vanish. This is not fair. If I understood correctly, our friend works on the book with a group of her friends. This is a question coming from 32 people.
It is obvious from the length of the question.
Yes. Reading this question made me think that we need to discuss these topics more in detail so they can be established in our minds, especially her question of who are we? Indeed, in the following parts of the book, these topics will be explained more and more. Still, let's discuss the parts of her question, namely, spirit and being, and the withdrawal of spirits from the universe. The answer is direct, actually, and I want to explain it by the terms of the book. Now, the book described the spirit as the super-universe truths. And starting from the first video, we repeated that amorphous matter cannot move by itself, and only by the influences coming from the original principle the motion begins in matter. Later, matter goes through a passive adaptations phase, which is termed as a dark stage. Until the stage of being's emergence in matter, there is an initial hydrogen atom. And by the gradual development of this hydrogen atom, the more developed hydrogen atom occur, which is the substance of our hydrogen realm and hence, the being. As spirits connect to an atom, that is, matter, they learn governing matter and develop matter by executing formations, deformations, by gathering and dispersing matter. Hence, manifestations and further development of matter. This is the gist of the topic we will discuss this evening. Let me read from the previous pages. So each being is an evolutionary vehicle assigned to the service of a certain spirit until the end of the universe. This is such a being that it expresses all necessities of spirit's behaviors which occur in the super-universe plan. And these expressions are reflected to spirit as if reflected from a mirror. Therefore, the being is the symbol of a spirit, to whom it serves, in the universe. So, because the being in the service of a spirit completely expresses all the behaviors, stirrings and needs of that spirit, we can also look at it as the spirit itself. For, every manifestation that appears on that being is but an expression that is reflected to the universe, representing the appearance of spirit's behaviors, in proportion to the allowance of the matter possibilities it uses. And when spirit is no more, all expressions and manifestations belonging to it will vanish and the being will disintegrate at once. Of course, here, the process of being's becoming is infinitely vast. Starting from the emergence of first atom from the amorphous matter, then emergence of our hydrogen realm, and beings going through all those infinitely long stages, atom, plant, animal and human, and it does not stop here but continues, again infinitely, towards the plan of love, plan of duty and the unitary. Therefore, for us humans, this process is immense, almost infinite. Yet, when we consider this from our narrow perspective, we see this worthless. We simply think in terms of our individual existence in human body that lives, let's say, 90 or 100 Earth years. And when we die, what we left on this world is the material structure of our bodies. However, the essential knowledge that is gleaned from all those accounting after death is transferred to our own being. And not only from this lifetime. Also from all those incarnations, the essential knowledge from 500 or 700 lifetimes of our being. All that knowledge is stored in the being, in that perceptual point. And what is advancing is our being. Yes, we don't say anymore that we have a spirit. We now say that we have a being, a spiritual being that is connected to a spirit. In a sense, we humans are like a representative of that being which reserves all those ever-encompassing, ever-widening essential knowledge. We are representatives of our being which is formed in our mother's womb through our being's projection, that is, 7/8 of its influence, and appear now as Tülin or Bilgehan. And our worth is our consciousness. We observe and live in the midst of events in world life. We are part of a constitution which accumulates all those experiences, after all those accountings, daily and after death of us. And if we take the being as an ensemble of influences and energies, we are also an ensemble of organizations of small beings. Each of our cells is an organization. Millions of cells in our brains have their own beings and they make up organizations. We are a universe in itself. We are an immense wholeness within this mortal bodies. Or another simile, think a human body as a mothership and it has a captain. And there are many officers working in different part of this ship. Yes, this mothership looks like Tülin, right now. Yet, there is a captain managing all those officers, governing engines, drawing the routes, etc. And if necessary, for testing the mettle of the officers or the integrity of the mothership, this captain sails it towards an iceberg or maneuver around it. If the officers or the mothership fail the test, that is, if they can't adapt to changing situations, then it becomes suffering, our friends mentioned. So, if we look from this angle, what are we? Only consciousness? Not a being? Not a spirit? Well, I am and you are all of these at the same time, and specifically, none of it at the same time. Yet I am and you are a whole of all of these, and a reflection of a spirit at the same time. And I am and you are under the umbrella of the system of our being. Yes, I think that we need to consider all of these as an umbrella system. Would you like to add things to my words?
Well, we can talk about this until next morning. You already made a good summary of this immense process. It is a big morsel of food for thought. So, I'd like to add something else. I will ask our friends to take the book as a whole, and if they only take parts of our spontaneous comments and examples, their questions may confuse them more. Previously I had mentioned that we humans are in a different phase of our development. When we pass to the human stage, a special authority, a special agency given to us. This is freedom of choice. Of course, I don't talk about the freedom for internet, journalists, etc. What I mean is the existential freedom, which is the freedom of choice. Seeing the consequences of our choices and freedom of choosing accordingly when we are at a fork in the road, of course with the help from our being, in a gradual fashion. The first symbol of this is Adam. He is told, don't eat the fruit of this tree, and he was left alone. To choose. By the way, when you read Adam or Eve in the religious books, don't take it as gender roles. They are the symbols of humanity. Back to the choosing. Adam ate the forbidden fruit and he learnt the mistake and then do applications of further choosing. In the Quran, in Surah At-Tin, there is a phrase as, but we will reduce them to the lowest of the low, and it refers to coming down from that semi-subtle realm to our hydrogen atom realm. And it is still not a descend or degrading. In the divine order and the universe, we read in many places that between the stages of development there are semi-subtle realms, an intermediary milieu. From plant stage to animal stage, we pass through a semi-subtle realm. From animal stage to human stage, we pass through a semi-subtle realm. And even from human stage to plan of duty, there is still a semi-subtle milieu to pass through. So, this is not about lowliness. This is about an acclimatization mechanism, when beings arrive at a lower vibrational field from a respectively higher vibrational field. So, we humans descended this vibrational field with the freedom of choice. Human has a being, consequently, a spirit as well, but in this phase of our development, our material bodies are beginning to reach the potential of gradual integration with our beings by becoming more attuned with that semi-subtle realm. And when we pass to that realm, we will be with all of our comprehension, with our freedom of choice and in an expanded state of intuition. Only in that state we can be taking duties in the plan of duty, after all. Therefore, on the contrary to this assumption of unworthiness, we are becoming more and more free and capable of integrations with our being. Of course, it is not about making distances between shorter, but becoming more in tune with that higher vibrational part of us. Because of this, as we develop in that direction, we need to change the question. Instead of, who am I, we might begin to ask, what will I or my being become? For example, as we understand more, our consciousness increases, and whatever happens as our comprehension widens, more of this happens at our higher vibrational part. So, as our widening comprehension and the essential knowledge accumulated in our being interacts, spirit influences more motions. Let's try to understand this in this way. And in death, we have no business with concerning with the amorphous matter. It is spatium. This isolated state has nothing to do with the amorphous state of matter.
Yes, I see that our friends having trouble with the concepts, and it is so normal, and we thank them for writing us and ask about these concepts. It means that we need to be clearer when we comment on these concepts. Let's go back to our topic. How could be we worthless? Our lives are precious, and this whole organization of the universe is a magnificent harmony. And all the progress we strive for is to increase the feeling of becoming a part of that harmony, after all. So, forget about such thinking like we will revert to amorphous state, we will vanish, etc. And there is no meaning worrying right now about something that will happen after an infinite time in that immense infinity. Right now, focusing on our place in that harmony, on our being and on understanding the organization in this whole system is more beneficial for us. So, withdrawal of spirit from the universe or matter universe reverting to amorphous matter is far away from us, infinite times infinite.
And also, at such states, there will be no self, anyway. We will not be selves as we are, then. What makes you worrying right now about such states is the self. For a spiritual being that reached the unitary, there is nothing like self, there is not even duality there. What makes us questioning such states is ourselves. It is because of our bodily concentration or focus caused by the survival instincts of our organisms. This instinct and the fear of dying is the part of the package in the world life. That's why, the idea of perishing feels scary. However, nothing perishes, fire turns to ashes, ashes mingle with air then come down with rain, and atoms gather and make formations again. There is a cycle and you know it. I mean, don't push your mind into a corner, to such degree of non-existence.
And in the book, we already read that mankind cannot know about the amorphous state of matter. So, there is no such thing that when we die, we become amorphous matter. I think, we must understand this as a strong emphasis on the immense system of influences from the spirits that put the whole universe in motion, and this is such a force that if the spirit's concentration or focus withdraws from the universe, then matter reverts to amorphous state. Yes, a comment came from a friend. He says, how come we are worthy? The book says that everything is a lab tool for spirits. First of all, this is a simile, a metaphor. And please imagine that if the spirit cannot be within matter but can be only in connection to matter indirectly via influences by forming, deforming and transforming matter, what emerges in this process? The manifest universe. And how such an incredibly immense manifestation makes us worthless. We are a part of this manifestation. Another friend wrote, you are the spirit and what makes you worthy is your being.
The book explains the mechanism, the order of the universe. As long as you understand this mechanism, it doesn't matter if you feel yourself as spirit or a spiritual being, no problem there. But first, understand the order of things. We still work to understand it. This fuss about naming is maybe because all of us are only at the beginning pages of the book. Yes, all these concepts and terms, like realms, spatium, universe, cosmos etc. were confusing for us, as well when we first started reading this book. But you will see, as well, that as you read and become more discerning what is what, which is which, your questions will be answered. Yes, adapting to changes in concepts requires discernment and perception. For example, this new term of unattainability, well, we used to say, God, but the content of this word was not bringing the same meaning in our minds, anymore. This new term in the book took the meaning up to a much more sublime level. And why the previous term does not bring the same meaning for all of us anymore? The concept of creator gets developed in tandem with the realities of people. So, there is no problem if we don't think and feel the same about these concepts and terms. We previously read in the divine order and the universe this sentence. We leave all divine concepts about this to mankind's degrees of comprehension and especially their ability to intuit. Even in the religious books, well, in Quran, in Surah Al-Kafirun, it is advised to the Prophet to say, you have your way, and I have my way. So, all of us understand according to our own realities, hence, there is no need for arguing about which is which. We agree to disagree. And, together we will read so many unexpected things throughout the book, so let's leave it here this evening and continue reading more pages.
You are right. There are many questions coming in, but let's reply these questions next week. And after all, we are only at the beginning of the book. So, I continue reading. It is necessary to separate the concepts of advancement of matter in parallel with those of spirits by mentioning the terms development and evolution. For these are separate things. Development is the state for matter in universe, of the increasing of motions in their constitutions, of the complexity of their material combinations, of widening of their fields to be targeted by influences, of increasing their values. And evolution is the state in parallel with developments in beings which are in service to spirits. This situation is a part of the endless needs of spirits, of which we never can penetrate their quality, that need to be fulfilled in our universe and which is expressed by the evolution symbol in our world. So, the meaning of evolution walks in parallel with the meaning of developments which are its expression within matter. Therefore, studying the progress of evolution means studying the forms of development and progress of the being, which is a vehicle to it, and of matter which is the vehicle to this being.
Here, dear friends, this is a very important topic. First, the book establishes these two terms, development and evolution. Let's understand development as the progress in matter. Material development. As the development of matter in regard to spiritual needs. And let's understand evolution as the spiritual progress or advancement. Why understanding these two terms clearly is important? Because, in further pages of the book, when the development is mentioned, we can easily turn our focus on the progress in matter, and when the evolution is mentioned we easily understand that this is about the spirit. The book never makes a mistake about these two words, in that sense. And we try our best to be careful when we talk about these two terms. The second point is this phrase of widening of their fields to be targeted by influences. This phrase also points to the widening of the comprehension of the being. This process of widening is very interesting. Indeed, in both, widening of the comprehension of the being and widening of matter fields to be targeted by influences, both are development. Because the being is matter. Yet, in some pages of the book, in just a few passages, the evolution of being is mentioned, and it is when the book talks about the spiritual side of the being. Oh, yes, of course, all of the being is spiritual, but again, let's remember that the book explains the mechanism or interaction of influences. And widening of matter fields to be targeted by influences is very important for matter, and this is an imaginative state, valid in meditations or in many methods of healing. Just think about this. See, this is a short paragraph but so full of information. Let's read this sentence. Studying the progress of evolution means studying the forms of development and progress of the being, which is a vehicle to it, and of matter which is the vehicle to this being. See, these two terms are used here and it is obvious that they go in tandem. As evolution progress, the being requires a more developed matter. As spirit evolves, its being searches for higher fields of application, higher level bodies, up to the last stages of human stage. The being chooses and builds a more developed human body with its brain and field of consciousness. And it gets developed more and eventually, even that developed body becomes insufficient. What comes next? The being concentrates on a much more developed or subtler body in the semi-subtle realm, and this concentration or grasping, again, depends on the developmental level of the being. And also, the evolutionary level of the spirit that being is connected to. Therefore, these two progresses go hand in hand, in tandem and support each other. So, in that sense, we can understand the evolution as the development in matter which makes the fields of application in matter ever developed, as in bodies, as well. Even from the most basic structure these two progresses work together. For example, a flagella of a one-cell bacteria reacts to light by moving its tail. This one-celled bacterium is a body, and this body has existential knowledge of its being and hence, a spirit. A cell gets developed and becomes, let's say, our eye. And our eye's existential side is much more developed. It is an organization of cells and cells beings, and each organization also has a governing being as the administrator. Yes, an eye's level of development is higher than a bacterium but still lower than the developmental level of the being that builds up a human body. And the utmost point of development in human body is the brain cell. This is a developmental level just before the human stage for the being. After experiencing the state of a brain cell, that being is almost ready for the human stage. Just like this, the levels of development progress in matter, and naturally, in the being as well. This is all I can say on this paragraph for now.
I'd like to remind some sentences we read in previous weeks, a question the book states, seeing that there is such absolute inaccessibility and unattainability between spirits and universes, then how can spirits use all the possibilities of universes, even down to the tiniest particle, and how can spirits and universes embrace each other as if they were intertwined? As an answer to this difference in the natures of spirit and matter, the book also states, the force of the original principle, which on the one hand takes in spirits, these are symbolic expressions, also on the other hand takes in universes. And spirits and universes, in the presence of this sublime principle, are reflected in each other as if being reflected by a mirror. Therefore, here, there are two vastly different substances, without any direct connections. When we lay our hand on a mirror, our hand and its reflection on the mirror look like they touch each other, but in fact, they don't. Yet with this mechanism of reflected influences between these two vastly different substances, they progress in tandem. As matter gets developed, the field of influences of the spirit widens. And soon, we will read the types of the influences in detail. And again, in the previous weeks, we read passages that mankind cannot understand the nature of spirits, that we cannot understand the evolutionary needs of spirits. But now, here, we read this, studying the progress of evolution means studying the forms of development and progress of the being, which is a vehicle to it, and of matter which is the vehicle to this being. For me, this means, if we want to study the root of the evolution, turn your face to the being, hence, matter, and study its development. Even though the being is a reflection of spirit, this reflection still can give us an idea about spirit. Therefore, in order to understand this intertwined relationship of spirit and matter, we need to start from our existential system. We need to understand here before understanding there. We need to study the matter of here. As you had mentioned in our video of 2 weeks ago, prophets had said, I have overcome the world. And Muhammad said, O Allah, show me the reality of all things as it really is. These are pointers for us in that kind of study. Matter of our bodies, matter of our world, matter of our universe, and even matter of all emotions and feelings we have, as we discussed in previous videos. So, it is obvious that for all of us it is an imperative to understand what is our being and to internalize this knowledge so we can truly see in which direction it directs us. And to do this, we need to give more attention and importance to the topic of imagination, which is emphasized throughout the book and you also mentioned many times.
Yes, the key point is here the being. We need to concentrate on our being. After all, what organizes the developed matter is the developmental state of the being, which is also a material development. And the material development of the body which is connected to the spirit via its being is only possible by the development of the being. But it is not like, okay, you spent 20 years or 200 years in the world, now you can build a better body with a better matter. I mean, development of our being does not happen like this. What makes the real work here is our being, and yes, let me say again, when I say being, please also understand spirit.
Actually, we have many different terms for the being in different schools and teachings, like sublime self, higher self, Atman, oversoul, etc. If it feels alright to you, let's say spiritual being, so spirit is included in this term.
Alright. This term feels much better.
Alright then. Let's continue reading. of a spirit that will start its evolutionary application in the universe for the first time. Its initial states belonging to this application are reflected in the amorphous states of the universe. This reflection is done by the channel of influences. And influences are the expression and manifestation of the force, which we call necessity, of the original principle which encompasses and governs both the world of spirits and universes, of which quality we will never understand, nor even intuit, upon the spirit, matter states belonging to our universe. These influences, carrying the needs of spirits to universes, bring about motions in matter, which we have previously mentioned, through the duality principle and the value differentiation mechanism. Thus, motions in universe are the symbolic expressions of the stirrings and behaviors of spirits, which are manifested as matter constitutions through the channel of these influences. So, influences belonging to the simple, inciting spirits, entering the universe for the first time, allow this initial matter at once to become fields of observation for these spirits. Another paragraph which is short but rich in meaning. It encompasses the topics we discussed previously.
Repeating previous topics in a wider context is one of the main properties of this book. Soon, it will build up some new topic on this, that's why it wants a strong foundation. And we must be attentive of such repeated topics, because they are clues for wider context.
Exactly. And again, here we read influences are the expression and manifestation of the force, which we call necessity, of the original principle which encompasses and governs both the world of spirits and universes, of which quality we will never understand, nor even intuit, upon the spirit, matter states belonging to our universe. And even the plan that communicates this knowledge is in the plan of duty or close to the unitary, they say, of which quality we will never understand, nor even intuit, they don't say you mankind will never understand. In the book there are such nuances, like neither ours nor yours is mankind.
Yes, all these necessities, filtered through the unitary and arriving at the universe matters as influences is another beautiful image that we need to establish in our minds. This starts and continues the occurrence of the things that are necessary to occur. That is, in accordance with the laws, with the original principle. And whatever is necessary to occur occurs via these influences through the organizations of the beings in duty. And here, this phrase. Motions in universe are the symbolic expressions of the stirrings and behaviors of spirits, which are manifested as matter constitutions through the channel of these influences. This again is about these progresses advance in tandem. As the spiritual progress occurs, further development occurs in the being, consequently, the fields of application for the being widens, or in other words, the capacity and complexity of the body organization the being can build increase. This is what is termed as development. Then, those bodies begin to become fields for influences with higher energies. And as this progress goes on, at some point, even those bodies become capable of understanding and learning to utilize those fields, and of course, this results in emergence of a much higher development of matter. And here we are, as those bodies. We are not just flesh and bones, we are the projection of our being, we are the consciousness of our being. We will understand this better when we read the structure of the consciousness in further pages. So, please don't think the being is sending us influences from someplace else. We are always with our being. As stated in the book, it is in a perceptual point, so it is in its place and at the same time, everywhere. And we are the concentration point of our being. At the same, we are the point our being receives influences from all other spiritual beings, that is, humans in its vicinity, and after evaluating these influences, our being influences these other spiritual beings through us, as humans. This is how the being develops and how the spirit it is connected to evolves.
Yes, even in the semi-subtle realm, the being uses a structure, a body made up of the matter of that realm. Of course, the being easily uses the imagination to gather, disperse and transform that semi-subtle matter. Yet, in this realm of ours, this coarse realm of hydrogen, building up our bodies is much harder. Even the book describes the world life as the coarse hydrogen cosmos, which is a life of shackled imprisonment full of suffering and hardship. Yes, the book talks about such semi-subtle bodies or plans where there will be no need for our flesh and bone bodies, with their aches and illnesses that eventually die. Still, we are in our bodies and are in the hydrogen realm, so we are trying to give its due. It seems like the world is a very hard and tightly arranged grindstone, and it grinds the individual grains of us humans so well that the end result is a superfine flour. And as these individual grains, we perceive and feel the horizontal or vertical influences from each turn of this grindstone as tests and trials of life. Yet, our beings strive for this fine result, as the essential knowledge. That's why the book puts our world at the highest and most valuable spot of this system. And if the aim is developing matter so it can become wider fields of application for the beings, then isn't our world the best place for this purpose? Just look at its upheavals, its ups and downs, its immense complexity, etc. That's why it is so precious. It provides a vast diversity of possibilities as the fields of observation to the spirits, diverse fields of experience and application to the beings, in other words, to us. Our elders and spiritual teachers were telling us, all the time, that incarnating in the world is not an insignificant thing because it happens only through an immense organization. Still, before the disclosure of this book, even within our circle of spiritual researchers, there was a tendency for belittling the word life. People were looking for acceptable shortcuts of leaving the world and not reincarnating anymore, or longing or fantasizing lives in other realms, in short, underrating matter. However, now we see that we cannot leave this system before giving its due. It is not only an issue of ascension anymore. If we really want to ascend, then we need to delve into the depths of matter as much. In that sense, the balance is important. Alright, let's continue reading. Responsive matter as motions to the influences coming from a spirit are again reflected back to the same spirit by returning from that channel of influence. In this way, in depending on the necessities of original principle and by the help of these powers, the indirect relation of spirit and matter is established and spirit gets, for that moment, what it gets from matter. Afterwards, according to the new needs of that spirit, its observations continue via the same ways and manners in other matter either existing at the same matter stage or in a higher matter stage. For the spirits at the initial stage, an evolutionary need of a spirit corresponds to every moment of matter in the developing state. In other words, any state of the development in matter becomes a mechanical application ground for any spirit. The state of spirits here is only to obey those motions. The stage we mention is the initial and crudest stage of the universe. This stage, which is darkness for us, exists below the hydrogen stage we will mention later. All proceedings at this stage are executed in accordance with necessities of the original principle, but within the scope of the governance mechanism encompassing the universe which is established by the unitary in the uppermost boundary of universe, through ways of which we do not know. We can only say, although vaguely, that the progress of novice spirits that need to evolve at this stage is subject to a mechanical and passive evolutionary principle. Because the evolutions of spirits at this initial simple matter stage are not easy and fast as the development of matter, spirits at this stage do not remain connected to a single matter. At each moment they change milieus. In this way, as spirit leaves a matter which is relatively more advanced than itself to a more deserving spirit, it continues to progress as always passive, that is, without intervening with matter motions in the simpler matter within the lower matter stages in which it exists with its slow progression.
We previously had discussed the amorphous state of matter. It is without any form, not exposed to any influence, without any motion. And for us, humans, it does not exist because there is no reference in us for such a state. However, this passage talks about a stage after this amorphous state of matter. Still, this is coarse, a very coarse state of matter. Elementary, the most basic state of matter. And still, it does not make an impression on our senses. The book calls it as darkness. However, there is a distinction made here. Yes, for amorphous matter, the book used the term dark field. Here, again, the book states that this is darkness, below the hydrogen stage. But I think, this two darkness are not the same. This second one has received the influence and somehow set in motion. From where it received the influence? From the original principle. Why it received the influence? The needs of novice spirits emerged, and because of these needs, the necessities from the original principle are filtered through the unitary, and upon hitting the amorphous matter, motions are initiated in it. Once the initial motion begins, an indirect exchange starts between the spirits and matter, but there is no being at this stage. Because novice spirits don't know how to build up a being. Because they are inexperienced in that sense, they don't know matter, how to form it, gather it. Because of this, matter in this stage is only a mechanical application ground for these novice spirits. The state of spirits here is only to obey those motions. That's why they are subject to a mechanical and passive evolutionary principle. Because, also matter is mechanical, it is not developed yet. These novice spirits are passive because they are in a stage of only receiving impressions. Next stage is also for receiving impressions, but then, matter gets developed in a fast fashion, and for spirits it is not easy to remain connected to single matter. Because of these, it is like a dance, novice spirits pass from one matter to another, in accordance with their rhythm. If they cannot keep up with the rhythm of a matter, they move on the next matter. I am making it too simple maybe, but actually, this is an almost infinite process. But in this process, spirits evolve through the influences coming from the original principle, and the impressions they receive in this mechanical and passive stage. I just saw a question on the chat window, and let me reply. The darkness mentioned for the amorphous state is not the dark energy that is somehow measured or mapped in space, or as the book terms it, in the astronomical realm. I can certainly say that amorphous matter is not dark matter or dark energy. Period. However, this second dark field the book mentions may be the counterpart of the dark energy or dark matter, but I cannot say it for sure. It is a big maybe. I say this because some scientists and theoretical physicists formalize this dark matter theory that it must be elementary, a basic matter made up of initial building blocks of particles. But no such matter is detected or measured so far. So, please know that these two may not be related, at all.
Let's emphasize again that the term novice spirits points to the spirits that are inexperienced in the matter and substance of our universe. Because we already read in the book that there are many universes with different universe substances, and the spirits continue their evolution through their connections with those universes. So, again, the novice spirits are inexperienced about the substance of our universe, and because of this, at first their evolution is passive and mechanical. Then after the first hydrogen atom is emerged and begins to get developed, a spirit will connect to an atom. I suggest our friends to watch our previous videos in this series because we had shared many external videos and clips about the elementary particles. They will be helpful.
Yes, the quarks, subquark particles etc. in these previous videos do not yet emerge in this stage. To me, these emerge only after the stage the book describes as the initial and crudest stage of the universe exists below the hydrogen stage. And another point to emphasize here is, at this stage, spirits are really passive, they don't intervene with matter motions in this simpler matter within the lower matter stages.
They only get impressions, and while in this matter stage, all their motions and applications occur under the light of the original principle, and again in accordance with the evolutionary needs of the spirits. Until a novice spirit evolves enough to connect to an atom, it passively moves from one matter to another. And when a spirit is evolved enough to connect to an atom, then another almost infinite phase begins. Spirit will be connected to that atom until it takes it up to the stage of being. Then, spirit and its being will build and utilize a body. They will go through all those stages of development of matter, plant stage and the intermediary milieu, animal stage and the intermediary milieu and the human stage. But in this almost infinite process, spirit and it being learn mastering matter, gathering and dispersing it, transforming it. Again, we see here this two-sided advancement. As spirit evolves, matter gets developed. Okay, let's stop reading. The book will go in detail about this stage in following pages. But before we say goodbye, there is another question to answer. Sometimes we read and hear shocking news: a person killed and buried a relative, or raped a child, etc. Is the spirit of such a person novice? Or in which level of evolution?
It is obvious that it is not a novice spirit. If that being takes over that kind of heavy responsibility, then its spirit is not novice.
Let's make it really clear. The concept of novice spirit is only about the initial stages of the matter universe, even before an atom emerges. But the example in the question kills, rapes, etc., and it means that this person's being and spirit have already been evolved enough to be included in the cause and effect system. And all those experiences in the human stage are related to the development of conscience, or more correctly, learning and finding balance between earthly cravings and conscience. Therefore, even if a person kills, rapes, or detonates a nuclear bomb to kill thousands of people, it does not mean that that human being's spirit is novice or not evolved. On the contrary, it points to a human being that entered a very arduous phase in his or her development, a phase or cycle tightly packed with encountering chains of cause and effect within an immense system of development. So, please remember that we cannot consider people as novice or experienced by looking at their appearance in the world.
Of course, in the human stage, such heinous acts are considered very low in the developmental scale. However, in our human stage, we learn to do right by first making mistakes. As in the example of Sufi folk hero Mullah Nasruddin's habit of riding backwards on his donkey, we can only find the right direction by riding backwards.
And most of the time we cut the branch we are sitting on.
Yes, yes. And it is because of our freedom of choice. We do mistakes and live the consequences. Only after a while, it dawns on us that that choice was a mistake and we change our choices. Hence, development occurs. Still, we can say, as a reply to this last question, a person that kills and rapes may be at the initial states of human stage, his or her organism may be under the animal instincts, that being may not be sufficiently sympathized with subtler influences. It is better to consider such human beings in this way.
Yes, there may be novice human beings, as well, inexperienced in the human stage. There are many persons who can use the cutting technology gadgets but very inexperienced in the initial phases of the human stage, in sense of thinking and conscience. Well, in a traffic jam, it may become more obvious. Our aim here is to remember that the range of development is very, very wide, and also remember that, as this world cycle is nearing to an end, all beings are trying hard to finish their unfinished business coming from lower states, as well. Yes, next week we will reply your questions. Have a good evening, dear friends.
Good evening.